This is Digital Anarchist.
Hi, welcome back, everybody, to TechStrong TV. I'm Charlene O'Hanlon, Managing Editor at MediaOps, and I'm here now with Kurt Sand, who is the Head of Automation at Broadcom. How are you, Kurt? Thanks for joining me.
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. So how you doing in these pandemic days?
Doing well. Family's healthy. It's most we can ask for in these days. All a little stir crazy, but that's always secondary.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, a lot of things have changed in the business environment and at home too. But one of the things that hasn't changed is businesses need to push forward regardless of what's going on in the world. And I kind of want to talk to you a little bit about the concept of BizOps, because it's something that we've not really delved into too much on TechStrong TV, but I'm hearing it more often in the marketplace. And so wondering if maybe perhaps you can kind of walk me through what your definition of BizOps is and what we need, what's the big takeaway with it?
Sure. So I think a lot of us are probably more familiar with DevOps than the term BizOps at this point. But, DevOps has really had a profound and continue to have a profound impact on the business by really taking down the silo between dev and ops, and of course, getting code out faster out of the application lifecycle into operations in front of customers. And we certainly are still focused on that and think it's a key set of processes. What BizOps really seeks to add to that is the business context so that you have business outcomes throughout it, right? We can all recognize that we can push software out faster that's of quality, but still not solve a business problem. And then we look back and say, why'd we do that? And we end up with waste, usually creating rework or even waste of missing opportunity, right? Because while you were building the wrong thing, somebody else might have been building the right thing. So BizOps really seeks to say, how do we integrate the business outcomes, the business point of view across the whole DevOps?
Okay. All right. So really kind of putting context behind the work that folks are doing. This sounds maybe along it kind of parallels value stream management or value stream. What's the other value stream? I don't know. I can't remember. Value stream management.
Sure.
So, because that I've heard, and I had discussions with folks who have told me that that also kind of puts context, the business context, to the business of DevOps, if you will. So, how does this help the business? How is this different? I mean, how are value stream management and BizOps different?
Yeah, so I think there's parts that are related. I think the key, though, is my view, value stream management really picks up assuming somebody already built the sound business case and then retains the context through the rest of the life cycle. Where BizOps says, hey, like for an example, in this crazy changing world that we're in where everyone's in massive reprioritization, how do you have the business leaders sit down with the technology leaders and actually rethink the business priorities, think the business cases out, the ROI out, the outcome out, and then kind of push it downstream where maybe value stream management would pick up.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. So it's kind of a precursor, if you will.
It's a precursor and including maybe value stream management end to end.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. Great. So one of the things that I've also been hearing, and you guys are kind of banging the drum, is this idea of value ops. What is value ops, and how does it fit into this whole BizOps paradigm?
Yeah. So we really look at BizOps as three key domains, right? So there's the value ops domain, which I'll certainly answer your question in a second, the DevOps domain, and then AI ops. Mm-hmm. So in the value ops domain, what there's really been in itself two silos there, one around product portfolio management and strategy, separate from the agile execution. Okay. So first thing we're trying to do in value ops is take down that first silo of strategy and agile execution. Then it can move to DevOps in how we think of it, where we've done a really good job of breaking the silos down between maybe dev, test, and ops, really. Mm-hmm. And then on to AI ops, where the silos have traditionally been across the different infrastructure pieces, compute, network storage, but then also make sure that we get feedback loops all around the way so that, for example, the customer experience is fed back as quickly as possible to the business, or any issues in production is fed back to DevOps. So we're constantly looking for these feedback loops throughout those domains.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. So it sounds like we're almost breaking down the silos between the developer teams and the business side of things, and to kind of create this more holistic view of how what they're doing is not only benefiting the company, but benefiting customers and bringing that level of value back to the company so that they can go on and build even more value with future projects. Right?
Yeah, it really got started, I think, for a number of us that started deeply looking into this when we first saw some statistics about how bad the business outcomes that have been delivered from digital transformation projects are.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And we tried to go backwards to figure out why is that. And it wasn't the lack of investment. There's an enormous amount of investment that was put into digital transformation, and it wasn't from a lack of effort. Mm-hmm. And it seemed to be the key was misalignment. And it was misalignment between line of business, DevOps, and the folks that are in the more pure operational roles. And as a result of that, they just were either not building the right things, not getting them out fast enough, and just not getting feedback loops from the customer experience back to the business.
Go ahead.
Oh, so I was going to give an example, like a retail store that we work with did an amazing job of pushing out tablets as opposed to like point of sale registers. Mm-hmm. And the speed at which they decided to do this and which they got it into the stores was phenomenal. But they realized the uptake of it was terrible. And they couldn't figure out why. And it was only once we instrumented the applications on the tablets and we figured out, for example, where the people working in the stores were actually getting lost in that customer journey, that we could go back and say, all right, it wasn't that you didn't try to digitally transform, but you really did it in a way that your end users just couldn't figure it out. So let's get a feedback loop of constantly pushing out not just changes, but changes that improve that customer journey.
Okay. All right. That makes total sense. And it really does kind of demonstrate that the whole value ops proposition as well. So.
Yeah. And it also, like when we met them, they were rightly very proud of how fast they did this and how fast they could make updates, but they just didn't know what to update to make it better. So they were going faster, but kind of blind.
So it sounds like BizOps is kind of an underpinning of digital transformation. I mean, they kind of go hand in hand. But do you think that, since so many organizations now are accelerating their digital transformation efforts in light of the pandemic and the fact that, now digital transformation is something that they really have to do to survive, basically. It's no longer one of those long-term, let's improve the business, but it's kind of a nice to have, but now it's actually a must have. But so do you think that, with that in mind, can business transformation occur without BizOps? And then alternatively, can BizOps occur without digital transformation?
Well, for sure that we're focused here on digital transformation and how we perceive and deliver BizOps. I think it can happen without BizOps. It's just at the peril of solving the wrong problems, right? Okay. And what we see is the businesses, as a result of these changing times, the business has gotten dragged back into the decision making even more than they were in the past. Mm-hmm. Because the development shops were moving so fast, the business necessarily couldn't keep up with just feeding them their next round of ideas. Mm-hmm. But now that we hit these changing times, the business is having to rethink their own business processes, how they approach customers. So now everybody is sort of like paused and been like, okay, so what should we really go do next? And it really got people, I think it accelerated their need and their want to look at BizOps.
Okay. All right. So what am I missing about BizOps? What haven't we talked about that, you think folks should understand about BizOps?
I think when I talked about that misalignment, I usually characterize it as a chronic misalignment.
Mhm.
And what I mean by that is sort of an analogy to a disease. This isn't an acute disease. You take a pill and you feel better in the morning. It's more of a disease I think you manage.
Mm.
So I don't think that you ever like wake up one day, do a bunch of work and be like, I'm now BizOps, right?
Right.
I think it's something that you constantly focus on, that chronic misalignment. And there's some really healthy tension across these groups. It's not like you could or would want to take it to zero, but think about how you manage that misalignment over time and find ways to kind of harness that creative tension.
Is that a cultural thing? I mean, is that something that you think is kind of ingrained in companies, and it's going to take longer than 2 weeks or so in a series of well, I guess virtual workshops to change things, or is it?
Yeah, that I think that was really the part I was touching on on the what did we miss, that this is not just technology, it's definitely also culture. And people, first of all, have to be willing to change, but you do have to invest to get people better aligned through workshops, common vision, common strategy, common understanding, and I think more than anything, transparency. So a lot of what we focus on is how to pull together the data from these different domains so that people can get a more end-to-end view of the problem.
Mhm.
And then with that transparency and the data kind of comes trust. And then we hope after trust can come transformation.
Are you seeing more organizations actually adopting BizOps, or are we still kind of closer to, just kind of perfecting, or if you will, embracing DevOps and then kind of moving into BizOps from there? I mean, where are we on the bell curve?
I think it's accelerating. I think we've gone past early adopters onto now people kind of pulling for it. So I think we're kind of accelerating our way. We're certainly not mainstream. But I think some would maybe even argue DevOps hasn't made it mainstream as far as actual successful DevOps deployments. But I think we're past early adopters, and we're starting to get pull and inquiries from customers that we haven't reached out to, which makes me feel like the spark is lit and it's starting to grow.
Well, that's great. That's great. Well, I'm sure we're going to be hearing more and more about BizOps as time goes on, especially with the acceleration of digital transformation efforts in many, many organizations. So, Kurt, thank you so much for walking me through it. Really do appreciate your time today.
Thank you.
All right, everybody, please stay tuned to TechStrong TV because we have lots more coming up.